What are constraints in project management? In this video, I'm going to explain to you the concept and what exactly we're talking about and give you the history that I think you'll find really interesting. So how are constraints used and identified? What are the most important things to look for? And what are the different types? We're going to explain that all right now, so stay with us. So first I want to talk to you about how constraints are used in the industry. So if you're in the construction industry, we call, the predecessors on an activity a constraint. We call roadblocks constraints. We call constraints constraints. We call problems constraints. We call everything constraints. The reason is we fell in love with a book, which I did as well, called The Goal by Eli Goldratt. And so he used the term constraints or the theory of constraints. So now that's just what we use. And I think it's fine because I couldn't think of a better thing to do wrong. Meaning, it's a beautiful term. Okay, but there is a difference in construction between roadblocks and constraints, which is what we're going to talk about. In manufacturing, the product goes through these fixed stations. And these stations will have constraining factors that limit the flow of that product. So talking with one term of constraints in manufacturing is not a problem. But in the construction world, instead of the actual equipment, tools, processes, and people being fixed and the product moving, the product in construction stays fixed and it's the trades that move. So there are limiting factors in the interaction between the trades adding value to the product and there are things in the way of the trades. So we have an additional dynamic in construction that we need to focus on. So there are things out ahead that should be removed, that need to get out of the way of the train of trades. Those are called roadblocks. Constraints are things that are slowing us down, constraining the system. So it might be, hey, there's a leave out for the hoist over here, or there's a material access way or a loading zone over here. And so we're gonna have to weave around those, not through them and bump our head, right? So constraints are either a part of the environment or the train of trades that's slowing us down, but they're either permanent or semi-permanent, okay, most of the time. So there's a difference between roadblocks and there's a difference between constraints, and we're going to explain that right now. Here's why it's so important. If we are identifying problems on a job and we don't distinguish between removable problems and fixed problems that we need to adjust around, you're going to frustrate your trade partners. So if you say, hey, trades, you're going into zone 1, then zone 2, then zone 3, then zone 4, and they think they're just coming in as a straight shot, but the elevator's missing, there's 2 or 3 rooms not ready because of the hoist, there are leave outs, there are comeback rooms because of the exterior, they're going to come in and be like, what the, oh my gosh, they're going to be so frustrated. We need them to know they need to weave around constraints and that they need to remove or explode roadblocks in front of them. So they're two very different things. One of the things that I love about Eli Goldratt's theory of constraints is that we're looking for the limiting factor. So when superintendents and I tell people in our boot camps all the time, hey, when you're going around looking at the job, it's not just fighting fires. It's never fighting fires too late. It's never living just in the day of. It's never just walking and observing. You're always looking for the slowest trade in a sequence and the slowest zone and your most limiting factor. I don't care how fast your other trades are going because the pace of your job site is not going at the pace of your fastest trades. Your project is going at the pace of your slowest trades. So you need to be looking at what is constraining your system. And constraints will always show up as a location or a zone or a process, which means the trade or the crew or the work that crew is doing. So that's why I love TAC planning so much. So if we separate the two by way of definition, we can find things that are in our way that we just need to crush and get rid of. We can also find our most limiting factors from a trade standpoint and a zone standpoint, and we'll be able to speed up and really deliver that project on time. So let me first start where the concept of constraints came from. From the theory of constraints, let me take you through each step of the theory. The first step in the theory of constraints is to find your constraints. And that means you're going to look at the process or the system and its ability to achieve its goals. And if it's not, what is constraining it? What is the limiting factor? Constraints in general can exist in a number of different areas, including physical resources, process steps, policies, or market demand. But in construction, they primarily show up as a trade process or a physical location, a zone. The second step in the theory of constraints is to exploit constraints. Once you know that you have a constraint, and sometimes this is called a bottleneck, and I'll just go right into my construction example. If you know you have a trade process that is your constraint, or a zone that is your location or your physical constraint, you need to maximize your throughput by exploiting those constraints. So if it's a crew, can we get additional trained resources? Can we prioritize the crane for them? Can we prioritize the forklift for them? Can we really help? Can we take over material management? What can we do? Because we have to optimize that slowest trade. Or the zone, can we adjust the zone boundary? Can we make it easier? Can we simplify how the work is done? Can we prepare better for it? Once you know where your constraints are, you need to exploit them, optimize them, and increase your throughput. The third step is subordinating non-constraints. So this is what this means in construction. If you have a zone that isn't very complex, don't push people too fast or use additional resources to do work in that zone. Or if you have other trade partners that are going at a decent speed or even fast, don't push and rush them. Don't force them to use the forklift or the crane or other resources or time, right? Make them go in an even flow. And in construction and in TAC planning, once we know our slowest paces, we level everyone else out to go that same speed so that we don't use the time, the resources, the allocation, the time blocking, the energy, the management, the preparation, any of the energy capacity of the team towards optimizing the fast trades. We want that energy to go towards optimizing the slowest paced trades. We're going to subordinate non-constraint trades and zones to the ones that are constrained. Number 4, any trade process or zone that might be a constraint, we're going to elevate that, meaning we're going to make it easier to go through that zone, or we're going to better train the workers on that crew, or we're going to upskill their tools so they have better tools and equipment. Whatever it is we're going to do, we're going to elevate their game and make it easier for them to increase their speed, or to, with the zone, decrease its complexity so that we can flow and increase our throughput. And then 5, repeat the process. The law of bottlenecks basically says once you've identified and fixed a bottleneck, you will have new bottlenecks that show up in the system. So once you've sped up that slowest trade and improved that slowest zone, you will have a new slowest trade and you will have a new slowest zone. And you keep working from your slowest to your fastest, always optimizing, always exploiting, always elevating, and always making sure that we're keeping our focus where it needs to be, not on the fast, but on the slow. And so my challenge to you as we close out this video is don't worry so much about individual task activities. Worry about how fast the whole system is operating. Worry about the throughput. And so if you do that, you'll look at your slowest trades and your slowest zones. Like we said, always optimize them. When you're doing this, make sure that you are right-sizing inventory and procurement to pace the rhythm that you've established on the project. And so none of the possible overproduction that you could have with that procurement or with those materials will ever slow you down and falsely create a constraint in the system. Make sure that you have that all aligned beautifully and perfectly so that you can see really where your bottlenecks or your constraints are. Always make sure that you're pacing your train, meaning your other contractors, to go the same speed as your constraint or your bottleneck. Otherwise, you will have an excess of inventory and you will slow down the system. And always remember to make the distinction between a constraint which should be moved around and optimized and a roadblock that needs to be removed. And if you map these out on your roadblock and constraint maps and get the trades to visualize the difference, and you remove roadblocks and you optimize or improve your bottlenecks, you will start to go faster on your job and you will flow. So when you hear the term constraint, sometimes it might be a predecessor for an activity. The real term for that is predecessor. You might hear constraints describe problems on a project. The real term for that is either a roadblock if it's temporary and can be removed, or it is actually a constraint if it's semi-permanent or permanent. You may hear the term constraint used in manufacturing, and I bet it's almost always 100% accurate there. You also hear the term constraint used for programs like Autodesk Inventor or other engineering programs where you attach the axle to the wheel well. You in the program, these are two moving parts. In the program, you can constrain it, which means that they move together. So just know that the term for constraints really talks about whatever is fixing you, whatever is constraining you, whatever is limiting your movement. And if you hear the term constraint going forward, I hope that it newly and right now going forward means that it is something that's permanent or semi-permanent that we have to optimize and move around. And I hope you use the term roadblock for things that are in front of the train of trades that needs to be removed. So after this video, you should know how to use the term constraints properly, know where it is and where it came from. I'm going to link you in the description below to a blog post on this so you can remember. I hope you've enjoyed this video. On we go.